So what were some truly bad, awful, terrible Oscar nominees for Best Picture during the 2010s? Hey guys, it's Brian. Welcome to the Awards Contender. Now, I'm almost done with my Oscar ranking series talking about the wins of the 2010s. Before I get to Best Picture, I wanted to do one more video talking about what I think are some truly terrible Oscar nominees for Best Picture throughout that decade. Like, most of those nominees are pretty solid, many of which I love, but there were a few here and there between 2010 to 2019 that I was like, really? Really? Best Picture? So this will be fun to kind of break down what were the 10 films that did not need to get into this category. Let's start with number 10, Vice.
You're sorry. One time is I'm sorry. 2 times makes me think that I've picked the wrong man.
So this movie was fine. Like, I would say for about an hour, I was kind of into it, but then I felt like it overstayed its welcome. Like, it didn't really have a lot of lasting impact, like in the days after I watched it. It felt kind of stale in a way, like a movie we should have gotten a few years before 2018. And like, the performances are fine. I thought Christian Bale did a very good job in that movie. His Best Actor Oscar nomination can stay. But Amy Adams, that's probably her weakest Oscar nomination. And I really, hate that Best Supporting Actor Oscar nomination for Sam Rockwell as George W. Bush. That felt very safe and obvious to me. Like, why are we nominating him for that a year after he won in this same category for 3 Billboards Outside Ebbing, Missouri? That slot should have gone to Timothée Chalamet for Beautiful Boy, not Sam Rockwell for Vice. In the years since watching that movie, I saw it the one and only time in theaters, I remember almost nothing. I remember a scene where it's like really happy and everyone's smiling and the credits start to roll and you think the movie is ending, but then it's like a big joke and then the movie continues on. And I was like, okay, it's Adam McKay, The Big Short. We're doing some interesting things here. It didn't all gel, I think. It didn't really flow, and I feel like the Oscars, the Academy, they were way too kind to Vice. I think in Best Picture that year, instead of Vice, they should have nominated 8th Grade. That is one of the absolute best films of 2018, and it still bums me out. It got 0 nominations, not even screenplay. What the hell, Academy? 8th Grade should have gotten into Best Picture that year, not Vice. Number 9, Fences.
Yeah? What's she at with him?
It's a girl.
Now, this movie is okay. I think of it as more of an acting showcase for Denzel Washington and Viola Davis than I do a great film. Are people revisiting and loving the movie Fences today? I mean, there's a lot of good stuff in it. Denzel Washington is, of course, a talented director. He keeps things moving. On a visual level, I wasn't very taken with Fences. It does very much feel like a play turned to a movie. You can really see the play in that one. And when you have Denzel and Viola, sometimes you can just let the camera run, right? Just in close up on their faces. And that's interesting enough. You don't need to show this big world that they're inhabiting. Just keep it on the characters. I get that. But on a visual level, I do think Fences could have been a little bit stronger. And beyond the performances, there's not a ton to recommend about the film. I'm kind of surprised, actually, it got into Best Picture. I think there were other better films that year that have a more dynamic visual style and challenging narratives and things. I feel like, in a way, Fences the movie rode the coattails of those performances. of like Washington and Davis and how well they were doing throughout the entire award season. Like Washington won Best Actor at SAG. He was competitive to win the Oscar that year. Davis basically swept the season. So it's like, well, we love these performances enough. Let's also give it a Best Picture nomination. I just don't think the movie is as memorable in a way as those two performances. I don't really think about the film very much anymore. So this isn't a terrible Best Picture Oscar nomination, I would say. It's just kind of an unnecessary one. I think a much better film of 2016 that absolutely should have gotten into Best Picture was Jackie. That was in my top 3 favorite films of the year. I mean, talk about taking risks in that story, like in that performance by Natalie Portman. That film, to me, is much more than just the Natalie Portman performance. It's also an extraordinary film in so many ways. I've seen it twice. It was just as challenging and fascinating the second time. I think Jackie should have gotten a Best Picture Oscar nomination that year, not Fences. Number 8, Jojo Rabbit.
You look good. You're okay, kid. Now go home, look after that sister of yours. Okay?
Now, as I talked about in my Best Adapted Screenplay Oscar wins of the 2010s ranking video, I'm not a huge fan of Jojo Rabbit. I know it has a lot of fans. That was my least favorite film in Best Picture for 2019. I only gave it a 5 out of 10. I was like, I admired certain elements of that film. The performances are strong. There are a few standout moments, like emotionally, comically, and things. I just never found the tones of that movie to blend very well. And at the end, my hands kind of closed on air. I didn't know what to take away from that experience, that film. So, I mean, I get it. I understand why it got some love that award season, why it won the Oscar for Best Adapted Screenplay. I get it. But like, compared to some much better films that year, some of which didn't even get into Best Picture, I was underwhelmed by Jojo Rabbit. I have not had any desire to revisit that movie. And like, all of you who love it, you can have it. like go crazy. Watch it once a year. It wasn't for me. That was the final film I watched before the COVID shutdown. Like, that was the last movie I saw in theaters for 6 months, maybe more. And so I didn't go out with a great one. I went out with a movie that many people adore, that it was okay. It was fine. I am still shocked to this day that my second favorite film of 2019 didn't get a single Oscar nomination, and that was Uncut Gems, which had my favorite performance of the year in Adam Sandler. That was a revelatory performance from him. He has never been that good in a film. He was so exciting to watch, and the movie itself is just fantastic, hilarious, stressful, always interesting on so many levels. Like, it couldn't get into best editing or score or something. Like, did nobody in the Academy watch Uncut Gems? I gave that movie a 10 out of 10 in a heartbeat. For Best Picture at the Oscars, I would have given a slot to Uncut Gems over Jojo Rabbit. Number 7, Dallas Buyers Club.
Hey, don't pollute me with this processed crap. I'm eating healthy, and you should too.
It's protein. It's good for you.
It's processed. Put it back.
I've mentioned this on the channel before. I'm not a huge fan of Dallas Buyers Club. I don't love those Oscar wins for Matthew McConaughey and Jared Leto, like the way they swept that season. I was like, okay, I feel like especially for McConaughey, that was more about the McConaissance, how appreciative we all were that he was doing much more interesting work than he'd been doing in the 2000s, like mostly romantic comedies and things. Like those, 5 performances he did right before Dallas Buyers Club were so great. And, like he had a physical transformation in Dallas Buyers Club, and I get that. I understand why he won and did so well that award season. But the movie itself, I thought was just okay. Kind of like Fences, I do think Dallas Buyers Club got into Best Picture at the Oscars because of the love for the performances, not so much the narrative, not so much like how the film was put together. I don't know. I just feel like in a very strong field that year, 2013 Best Picture, I pretty much love all of the other nominees there. But Dallas Buyers Club, no, that didn't need to get into Best Picture. I think a much better movie that year that shockingly only got into cinematography. Like nothing else, nothing in the acting categories, director, like Prisoners. Prisoners from 2013 is an extraordinary film. Like, it's so well done on every level. It's so compelling. It still surprises me, especially since it did come out in September. It didn't open in like March, April or something. Like, Prisoners came out in the early fall, and it could only get into Best Cinematography for Roger Deakins. It disappointed me that that movie couldn't get like 4, 5, 6 Oscar nominations. It was that good. So in Best Picture for 2013, I would take out Dallas Buyers Club and replace it with Prisoners. Number 6, The Help.
What?
So here's an example of a movie I liked well enough at the time. I think it came out in August of 2011. I saw it with my mom in the theater. And like, it was entertaining. I liked the performances, the costume design, the period detail and certain things. Like, it was fine. I didn't walk out of the movie being like, ugh, that was horrible. I just feel like, more than a decade on, The Help has not aged very well. It's certainly a movie of its time, and even though I do admire the performances by that ensemble cast, including Viola Davis again, sorry Viola, Octavia Spencer, who of course won the Oscar that year for Best Supporting Actress. She's great in the movie, but some of those scenes depicting like race relations, like today, they're kind of icky. Like, they don't work very well today. And I feel like in 2011, that was a different time in a way. Like, even though it was only like 13 years ago, like, I feel like if someone made The Help now, it wouldn't have the same kind of reaction. Not everybody would be embracing it. I mean, Viola Davis recently said she regrets doing The Help. Like, she regrets having acted in that movie. She felt like the voices of the maids were not necessarily heard in that narrative. And yeah, there is an aspect of like the point of view of that story, how it's told. Like maybe it worked well enough in the book, but the movie, the way it represents its black characters, like how it tells its story, I just don't think it works very well, especially today. So I don't think The Help should have gotten into Best Picture. It was perfectly fine getting into the acting categories and things, but Best Picture didn't need to happen for that movie. I would go for something that was never going to happen. This movie's pretty out there. It's very dark and very cold, but it was my second favorite film of the year. I have revisited this film a couple times and it just bowls me over. I think it's fantastic. And that would be Shame, starring Michael Fassbender, directed by Steve McQueen. That is such a great frickin' movie. It's so beautifully shot, so well acted, a lot of really emotionally resonant moments. I think Shame should have gotten into Best Picture at the Oscars over The Help. Number 5, Les Miserables.
Deal with this foreman. Be as patient as you can.
Yes, Monsieur Madeline.
Now we get to what I think are the true stinkers, like the 5 films that were nominated for Best Picture in the 2010s that like really should not have happened. Les Miserables was a film I was looking forward to all year. I mean, it's got a great cast, obviously very good source material, and I sat in that theater totally bored out of my mind. I didn't think much of anything worked in that film. I mean, I liked it on a technical level, like there were some aspects like costume design, production design. Like, the look of the movie is kind of interesting, but I just never got emotionally engaged in that narrative, at least the way that it was told by Tom Hooper in that particular film. I saw Les Miserables on stage once, and I found it enchanting. I found it really great on stage. I don't know what went wrong in the movie version. Like, the performances are fine. I think Hugh Jackman does a good job in that film. Anne Hathaway, of course, is very good. Russell Crowe is not so good in that movie. I remember just rolling my eyes at his scenes. I feel like Tom Hooper ultimately wasn't the best filmmaker to take on that material. If it had been in the hands of a better director, someone who had a really dynamic visual style, maybe I would have liked it more. I don't know. But like, when I walked out of that theater, I was like, ugh, no. That did not work for me at all. And so I had to be reminded a few hours ago that Les Miserables from 2012 got into Best Picture at the Oscars. I was like, did that get into picture? It did. Holy cow. Like, the Academy loved that movie enough to not only give it, obviously, a lot of nominations in technical categories, in the acting categories for Hathaway and Jackman, but it also got into picture. Like, ugh, no. That shouldn't have happened. The movie, I think, that should have gotten the slot that went to Les Miserables that year is one of the 3 or 4 very best James Bond films, Skyfall. It got really close. I bet it just barely missed at the end of the day because that was a November release. It did extremely well at the box office. Everybody loved it. It is such a fantastic, richly textured James Bond movie. And like, for a Bond film to get into picture at the Oscars would have been so freaking cool. That's probably the one and only time it could have happened, but instead we give a Best Picture slot to Les Miserables. Like, come on. No, that slot should have gone to Skyfall. Number 4, Darkest Hour.
I come to you to learn your minds in this grave hour.
So here's another movie you might have forgotten got into Best Picture at the Oscars. Like, enough people watched Darkest Hour and thought, Best Picture. like, what? Okay, I get it. Like, it's a period film about Winston Churchill. It's got Oscar written all over it. Like, before they even make the movie. You think, well, that's obviously getting into Best Actor for Gary Oldman. Like, when they released the very first image of him in that movie, I think we all said, well, the Best Actor race is over. Like, that's going to Gary Oldman, as it did. And it's a very serious biopic. Like, older Academy members probably went nuts for Darkest Hour. But for me, I found that movie a total slog, like slow and turgid and not that interesting. Beyond the main performance by Oldman, I just don't take much away from that narrative. Darkest Hour was a very difficult sit for me. It's the only movie in Best Picture that year I don't like. It should not be there. I think there were so many better options from 2017. The movie I would put in Darkest Hour's slot is The Florida Project. I think that is a beautiful movie on so many levels. And Sean Baker, I'm so happy he's finally getting his flowers, like at the award ceremonies coming up here for Anora. But The Florida Project, I think, is almost as good. Like, it's a great, great film, and it only got into Best Supporting Actor at the Oscars for Willem Dafoe. And that never felt right to me. It should have gotten into Screenplay for Sean Baker, and it should have gotten into Best Picture. Over Darkest Hour? Hell yes. Number 3, Bohemian Rhapsody.
6 minutes long.
6 minutes?
You'd have to be mad to play it.
You'd have to be bonkers.
Positively forbid it.
Let's hear it.
Ugh. Oh my god. Oh boy. Oh boy. Bohemian Rhapsody. Best Picture Oscar nominee. What the hell happened there? why did everybody go so nuts for that movie at the end of 2018? I don't get it. I never understood it. Like, it was kind of entertaining in moments. Like, it could have gotten in at the Oscars somewhere, but like, to get into Best Picture, to win Best Actor for Rami Malek, I don't get it. I never have. I think that movie is very mediocre. It's not horrendous. I wouldn't give it like a 3 out of 10 or something, but like, I would be kind in giving it a 6. I'd probably go with like a 5. The music is great. I do think that's why a lot of people really took to the film, because those songs by Queen are fantastic. But as a movie, the way it is shot, the way it is edited, the editing in that movie is kind of terrible, and it won the Oscar for film editing. That was one of the worst Oscar wins, I would say, of the last 10 years easily. Like, what the hell was that about? And Rami Malek, I thought he was trying too hard in that performance. I didn't really love what he was doing there. So obviously, I guess I was an outlier because he like swept the season for the most part. I think his only loss was at Critics' Choice. Best Actor went to Christian Bale there for Vice, which I've also talked about in this video. Like, there's so many fantastic films in 2018. And for 2 of those Best Picture slots to go to Vice and Bohemian Rhapsody especially, that was pretty dumb, I'd have to say, that Bohemian Rhapsody got into Best Picture at the Oscars, that it won Best Picture at the Golden Globes. Remember that? It frickin' won at the Globes. Like, that was insane. I don't understand why everybody went so nuts for that movie, especially when there was a film so much better on every level. It's one of my favorites of the last decade, and it didn't receive a single Oscar nomination. Talk about genre bias. Hereditary. Hereditary was my favorite film by far of 2018. I have watched it 5 or 6 times. It is such a rich, beautiful, terrifying, well-acted, phenomenal movie, and like, just because it goes into horror territory, it can't get in anywhere at the Oscars, including Best Actress for Toni Collette. No, we have to give our nominations and prizes to Bohemian Rhapsody. Give me an effing break. Bohemian Rhapsody should not have come anywhere near Best Picture at the Oscars. That slot should have gone instead to Ari Aster's masterpiece, Hereditary. Number 2, American Hustle.
What's happening?
I got a plan.
How much do I loathe thee? Let me count the ways. I hate American Hustle. I don't think that movie works at all, especially on a narrative level. That story just goes in 1,000 different directions. Nothing really engages you, pulls you in, lets you learn more about the characters. It just all feels very surface level to me, and I will never understand why it dominated to such a crazy extent that award season. Like, winning things, getting 10 Oscar nominations, including picture. I will never understand that. That was weird to me. That was very weird, because I just didn't like that movie at all. I was so excited for it for months. Like, I really enjoyed Silver Linings Playbook. The cast is extraordinary. I was thinking it was going to be, at minimum, an 8 out of 10. So I took my parents on Christmas Day 2013, thinking this was going to be a great way to spend Christmas Day with American Hustle. It was going to be fantastic. So many critics were calling it one of the best movies of the year. And I want to say 20 minutes in, I slunk down in my seats and I went, oh, this is going to be a long 2 hours. The performances are fine. I think Amy Adams and Jennifer Lawrence, when they're on the screen, I was like not super bored. I didn't understand the love for like Bradley Cooper and Christian Bale, like getting in at the Oscars. Like Tom Hanks in Captain Phillips. That performance, not getting into Best Actor, Christian Bale taking his slot, has never felt right to me. I was happy that American Hustle did not win anything at the Oscars. It went 0 for 10. That was cool. I was like, okay, good, okay. It's not like gonna win any major prizes. It didn't deserve to. So yeah, I feel like there were so many better films in 2013 that could have dominated the acting categories, could have gotten into director and picture. My second favorite film of that year was Before Midnight, directed by Richard Linklater, starring Ethan Hawke and Julie Delpy, the third chapter of that amazing trilogy, my favorite movie trilogy of all time. And like Before Sunset, it did get into Best Adapted Screenplay, so that was something. But Before Midnight is a better film than just Best Adapted Screenplay Oscar nomination. That should have gotten into the acting categories. That should have gotten into Best Picture. Like over American Hustle? Hell frickin' yes. Over American Hustle, I would have been happy with like 50 other movies getting into that category. I could have lived with a couple acting nominations, I guess, but Best Picture, no. That slot should have gone to Before Midnight. And finally, that takes me to my number one choice. What do I think was the worst Best Picture Oscar nomination of the 2010s? This was a very easy call to make. My number one pick is Extremely Loud and Incredibly Close.
What did it say?
What a fantastic question. Doesn't say. It ought to, but it doesn't.
So, as was the case for many of the films I've talked about in this video, I was excited for Extremely Loud and Incredibly Close. I was anticipating that movie for most of 2011. Like, it had Tom Hanks. It had my favorite, Sandra Bullock. It had Stephen Daldry behind the camera. I read the book. The book was pretty good. So yeah, I was excited for that. I will never forget that December, I took a trip to Los Angeles to see some friends, and Extremely Loud and Incredibly Close had not opened in my town yet, but it was playing in LA. So early one morning, I went out to see it. I had heard mixed things about the movie, but I was like, this is going to be great. Like that cast, that source material. Even if I don't love this movie, I'm going to really like it. Like, there's going to be things about this film I'm really going to appreciate and admire and blah, blah, blah. No. This movie, this was bad. This movie was really bad. I knew probably 10 minutes in, maybe 20 minutes in, I was like, it wasn't working. Like, on a narrative level, the performances were off. Like, nothing was really gelling in that movie, and it had another 2 hours to go. I mean, again, the cast is strong. You have Hanks, and you have Bullock, and you have John Goodman. You have Viola Davis again. Oh my God. Oh my God. I am so sorry, Viola Davis. I really do love you. I think you're great. But even though the cast is very strong, nobody really gets a chance to shine. Like, Hanks is barely in it. Sandra Bullock has one really good scene where she goes off on her son in the kitchen. Other than that, there's just lots of shots of her in the corner crying and looking miserable, and she doesn't get much to do in that film. And the performance of the lead character, the boy, it's not great. Like, I don't like picking on kids or anything. But yeah, that performance was kind of irritating. I didn't really take to the Max von Sydow performance, which got into Best Supporting Actor at the Oscars. I remember that being a surprise. The other big surprise on Oscar nominations morning was Extremely Loud and Incredibly Close getting into Best Picture. Remember how they revealed that? They showed like the 8 films that got into the category, 4 on the left, 4 on the right. There was a pause, and then Jennifer Lawrence says Extremely Loud and Incredibly Close, and the press room goes wild. And I was like, what? No, that got into Best Picture? Are you frickin' kidding me? Like if that movie had come out any earlier in 2011, I think, if that had come out like in the summer or something, that would not have gotten into picture. It was a very late release that year. And I guess there was enough affection, even passion for the movie that it was able to slip into Best Picture. But I feel like most reviews of Extremely Loud and Incredibly Close were pretty mixed, if not negative, if not like abysmal. Like people just really did not take to that movie. It's got a couple moments I remember that are okay. Like there's a scene toward the end where he hears the voicemail of his dad. Like that scene had some power. It wasn't a train wreck. It wasn't horrible scene to scene, but overall as a movie, it doesn't really work. And so for it to get into Best Picture at the Oscars is a head scratcher. Like that one is like, what were we smoking, Academy? How did that happen? That was very silly on the morning, and what, now 13 years later, it's just stupid. Like that Best Picture Oscar nomination should not have happened. Like no way in hell. I am still bummed that my favorite film of 2011 only got one Oscar nomination. I think it was sound editing. Drive, starring Ryan Gosling and Carey Mulligan and an Oscar-worthy Albert Brooks, should have done better at the Oscars. It absolutely should have gotten into Best Supporting Actor for Brooks. I would have given it a cinematography nomination, a film editing nomination, and 100% a Best Picture nomination. Drive is so much better in like 1,000 different ways than Extremely Loud and Incredibly Close. Stephen Daldry's movie has not aged well at all. Nobody is talking about that film today. But Drive, I throw that thing in the Blu-ray player every couple of years and have the most amazing time. That is a masterpiece of cinema. One of the greatest movies easily of the 2010s. Drive should have gotten a Best Picture Oscar nomination. Extremely Loud and Incredibly Close, it didn't need to go to the Razzies necessarily, but it should not have come anywhere close to the Oscars. Thanks so much for watching and subscribing, and let me know in the comments below what are some of your picks for the worst Oscar nominations for Best Picture in the 2010s. Is there anything I left off the list? I'll see you next time at the Awards Contender.